Tonight, we are honored to welcome Jodi Kantor, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist and reporter for the New York Times, whose work has reshaped how we understand power, accountability, and the modern workplace. She is the author of The Obamas, an intimate look at the life inside of the White House, and co-author of She Said, whose investigative reporting helped spark the global MeToo movement. In her new book, How to Start, Jodi turns to a different question. How do we find meaningful work in a world that is changing faster than ever? Jodi will be in conversation tonight with her journalist, Ron Lieber. Ron is a longtime personal finance columnist for the New York Times, best known for his Your Money column. He is also the author of several books, including The Opposite of Spoiled and The Price You Pay for College. A quick note before we begin, we will have a Q&A after Jodi and Ron's conversation, and we also want to say thank you to our community partner, Elm Street Books, which will be selling Jodi's book, How to Start, and then Jodi will also be signing books following the program. Please give a warm welcome to Jodi Kantor and Ron Lieber.
This is my colleague, Jodi.
We're married. And this is the first book event we have ever done together in the course of releasing many, many, many books.
There's no scandal.
No.
Yeah, we didn't do anything untoward at the office. In fact, I became a journalist a couple years before Jodi. And the story of her becoming a journalist in the first place is one that she might share tonight or later on the signing line. But she got to the New York Times before I did, and I still remember the day when I got the offer and we realized that we were going to be working in the same building. We had no earthly idea that it would continue for 18 years and counting. And for all of you who are New York Times subscribers and have made that possible, thank you. So, Jodi Kantor. Jodi Kantor does stories of great consequence in the New York Times, and she lets the chips fall where they may, right? If Harvey Weinstein goes to jail, he goes to jail. If Jeff Bezos is shamed into offering real parental leave, like all of his competitors for the first time in the wake of Jodi's stories, it happens. If somebody reads about Starbucks and the fact that the women who work there have no place to breastfeed and decide that they're going to invent a little box, for people to breastfeed inside, a really nice box that you've seen in airports all over the country called Mamava, and they never would have thought of it had they not read Jodi's story, great. My job in the newspaper is telling people what to do. And what I love maybe more than anything, as far as we as a couple are concerned, is that this project of Jodi's brings us into a sort of overlapping space. And you probably don't want to be in an overlapping space for decades as a married couple working at the same institution, but it's been really fun to see Jodi get practical. It turns out her advice is amazing, and it begins with a very consequential question, and a quest, really, that you'll read about in the pages of How to Start, that actually ends with some practical advice. And that question is, how on earth can any young adult at this moment in our country, in our world, set against the backdrop of any number of things that we could spend a lot of time listing, how do you begin to start a life of consequence that contains work of meaning? And that's what we're here to talk about tonight.
So before we really dig into that topic, Ron and I wanted to know a little bit more about who we were speaking to. So we actually have a series of questions for you. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if the answer is yes for you to any of the following questions. Who here has gotten career advice that turned out to be totally wrong? Keep your hand up if it was from one of your parents. Raise your hand if the job you hold today, or if you're retired, the job you held for most of your career was one that you knew existed when you were 10 years old. Raise your hand if you are worried about a young person in your life, let's say somebody under 30, and their ability, and their ability to, as Ron said, put together a meaningful and rewarding work life in this atmosphere. Okay, great. I mean, you guys and the offspring you're talking about are the reason I wrote this book. This is a generational concern. Raise your hand if you or anybody in your family has done an interview that was conducted by AI and not a real person. Okay, wait, we're going to ask you to tell those stories. So for those of you who have raised your hands, think about it. Like we'll get to it soon, but I think it's kind of important for you to bear witness to what is actually happening in the hiring process. Okay. Raise your hand if you feel that you took on too much risk in your career. Raise your hand if you feel that you followed conventional wisdom too closely and did not take on enough risk. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so I think that kind of lays the groundwork for what we are hoping to make a collective discussion about work. I mean, part of why I wrote this book is that the discussion about work for young people is really negative now and not that helpful, right? There's like I'm so close to you, I'm looking into your eyes. We've all seen it, right? Like there's so much negative news. Everybody's so scared about AI. The hiring numbers are soft. It's a very frustrating environment. But rather than just like recite those negative facts that we all know all night, the reason we're here tonight and what Ron and I want to probe is, what does a powerful, productive response look like to these circumstances?
So Jodi doesn't know what I'm going to ask. We don't play that game in the household. We like surprises. We've actually made a commitment to engage in more surprising behavior and activity as we go forward. And so I've really been looking forward to this. Here's a question that I don't actually know the answer to because I never asked in the process. So this book was born from a commencement address that Jodi gave at Columbia College last year, her alma mater. As you may recall, Columbia was really going through a lot. It was a tricky time to try to advise the senior class or inspire the senior class. They had been beaten down pretty badly. Jodi went through a very interesting process to, sort of figure out what she wanted to say to them, which I'll let her describe to you. But it ended with a speech that was built around these two concepts that have become the centerpiece of this book, need and craft. Need is what the world cries out for, although you may not realize it in the moment. And craft is the thing that you can do or learn to do to service that need. Seems pretty basic. It's actually more complicated than that. But what I don't know, Jodi, is how did you figure out that framing in the first place? Where did the light bulbs turn on? Was it one of those 21 or 22-year-olds that implanted it in your brain? Or did the framing just appear fully formed on one of those mornings at 5:30 when I found you already awake at the laptop?
It came because Columbia students asked me a really hard and great question. So here's the backstory. So like a year ago, I get this email from Columbia inviting me to be the undergraduate commencement speaker, a huge honor and kind of a bad offer, right? Because you remember the complete chaos at Columbia. And my friends from college were stepping in and they were like, call in sick. Like, don't do it. Like, we don't want you up there. You're going to get booed. But something in me was like, give me those kids. Because I was so upset, not even from any particular political point of view, but this was a place I loved. This was a place that transformed me into, a place of light and ideas and discussion. And to see it descend into that kind of toxicity was terrible. And I wanted to give the kids, like, does anybody else feel like this generation, like, they just get served like the burnt ends of everything, right? And it's like, let's give them something good. So I said to Columbia, thank you, I'm honored, I'll do it on one condition, which is I need to talk to the students beforehand because I have to read this room very carefully before I give this speech. So I got on a Zoom and the students, Ron and I love hard questions. Journalists love hard questions. This is a time for hard questions. Like, given what's going on in the world, why bother with easy questions, right? We want to go to the real stuff. The students we literally get on the Zoom and they're like, we chose you because of your career. Our class, despite its political divisions, is united in one anxiety, which is, how do you find your life's work in this crazy environment? And as soon as they asked that, I was like, this is an incredible question, right? This is amazing. Like, it's really, really hard and really important and really good. And part of the reason I felt that way is because ever since Megan Twohey and I broke the Harvey Weinstein story in 2017, we had been invited to a ton of campuses to speak. And so we were talking to the journalism kids, but we were really talking about careers generally. And year over year, you could see the rising cynicism and dread about work. And these were kids, like some of them were at elite schools, more modest schools, but incredible kids, right? From getting really great four-year educations. And it was notable that, look, finding a career has always been hard, but it was notable that instead of the optimism and aspirational quality we usually associate with starting a career, there was this fear. So I had my assignment. And by the way, the assignment of a commencement speech is that you cannot be negative, right? Like, you have failed the assignment if you give a downer of a commencement speech. It's like the form is that it has to be uplifting. And also, we have a 20-year-old who was another big influence on this book, and she was like militant about, Mom, no false optimism, no false optimism. So like, coming from all sides, I had this really good hard assignment, which is, how do I say something that is genuinely galvanizing, genuinely uplifting, and actually is good advice? And so the answer to your question is that I looked around both my reporting and my life. I have mostly covered the workplace. The Harvey Weinstein story was people think it was a story about sex. Not so much. It's about work, right? Like, work was his tool of predation. He took some of the women he exploited were in their first day on the job, right? And they had ambitions, they had aspirations, and he turned them against them. So I knew a lot about work. I'd covered, a ton of different workplaces. I looked around my life, Ron's life, and I said to myself, who is happy and successful at work? Because we want both. We want both. And I said, the people who are happiest and most successful are the people who have paired a craft and a need. Oh, and also, by the way, another big factor was that I'm sorry, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. I think this generation is getting a lot of bad advice or no advice, right? I was just hearing too much hollow conventional wisdom. I was hearing a lot of false certainty, like frankly, from 20-year-olds where they were like telling me how the world really worked and like it was clear they were completely wrong. And so, and also I had seen, and I remembered myself the kind of like self-torture of what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my life? And so what I want to say to young people and really anybody and anybody making a job change is you want to pair a craft with a need. As Ron said, craft is the special thing you know how to do, an expertise or skill that other people do not have. My craft is that I do very complicated newspaper investigations. Ron's craft within the craft of journalism is that you know how to untangle the world of money. Surgery, right? Very obvious craft. I had breast cancer last year and I was treated at Sloan Kettering, and my surgeons were some of the most incredible doctors I've ever been treated by, and what practitioners of craft. But running a really busy restaurant dinner service is also a craft. Do any of you guys use the recipes in NYT cooking? Right. Okay. So those recipes are really well written, right? Even though like I am very much an amateur cook, those recipes turn out well because of their craft. They are constructed for a non-expert to be able to make well in a home kitchen. So the reasons you want craft are, first of all, in a world in which young people are being told that they're disposable or interchangeable, craft is the word no, right? Craft is no. I know, I have knowledge that sets me apart. And the job market is cruel. I mean, any employee can be fired at any time, but your craft is yours forever. It cannot be taken from you. So craft is authority. Need is propulsion. Need is, like, we've seen all of this. Who here has felt like they have been on a roller coaster for decades in terms of what kids are told to study that's like supposedly the golden ticket, right? When I was in high school, it was Japanese. It was learn Japanese. We were told that the Japanese were going to take over the world economy. And when I wrote that in the book, I was like, is anybody else going to remember it? And now every night, everybody's like, yes. Okay, we were told that the Japanese were going to take over the world economy and that you were going to be a loser if you didn't speak Japanese. Meanwhile, what happened? The Japanese stock market slumped for 30 years. Then it was learn genetics. Then it was learn Mandarin. Then it was learn computer science. And these are all great pursuits, but it's also like conventional wisdom, right? They're not perfect. They're not guarantees. And so I wanted to push past that, and I came up with need as a concept to probe young people and say, using your own eyes and your own ears and your own observations, what needs do you think society is going to have over your working life that you can perhaps help fulfill? What products, what care, what information? And the reason why I think answering that question is so important right now is that the lesson of like this kind of AI related entry-level job either collapse or panic, depending on how you see it. Young people are getting a horrible message, which is you're not needed, right? That like a paralegal or an entry-level analyst isn't needed. So I want this to be your answer because that message is false. It's false. Like, we need the energy and enterprise of young people in the workplace. We absolutely do. But you may have to make your own case that you are needed.
How do you develop a craft if you don't have a job?
So I would say that this is something to start in college. Like in college, I think you want to be trying on different crafts, playing with them. I like people who experiment. I think coherence is totally overrated. Like those resumes that just look like straight lines with like no changes in direction, like I almost don't trust them. I think rigid coherence can almost introduce distortion. So I would try different crafts in college, and what I would do, which I did terribly in college, is I would notice yourself. I would get a cheap little notebook, $1.99, and in the notebook, I would make columns on different pages. And on one page, I would write tasks that I feel drawn to. And then on another page, I would write tasks that I hate. And then as you go about, like whatever, your extracurricular life, your classes, your internship, I know it sounds like a cheesy sorry. I know it sounds like a cheesy journaling exercise, but I would write that stuff down because you will be noticing yourself better than I did. When I was this age, I was everybody's editor in college on their essays. I felt I was very bossy about it. I wanted everybody's copy to be good. So I would edit all these essays, but I did not have the self-knowledge to say, gee, maybe I should actually work with writing and text because I love this so much. On the next page of the notebook, I would write down who you feel really drawn to as you go about the world.
Who,
and who you feel really turned off by. Maybe don't use real names for that second part because you don't want the notebook to fall into enemy hands. But I think that's another guide. And so I would start looking for a craft by doing a very deep and detailed noticing of oneself, not necessarily in the isolation of a library, but in response to stimulation.
So this who did you feel drawn to business it's personal. Is drawing up a very specific memory for me. And here's basically what happened. So Jodi and I got fixed up the old-fashioned way. This was 1998, right before the internet was starting to fix people up itself. And it was a woman who didn't know us very well, but she had just gotten evicted from her illegal sublet and came to Brooklyn to see a couple people who lived there. And on the way back, it was Valentine's Day. We were all dateless. And she was like, wait a second, the two of them? I think they might both be Jewish. And that was it, right? But what I later learned when Jodi decided that she wanted to be a journalist was that I was the fourth straight in a succession of journalists that she had dated, right? So the whole question of who you're drawn to, right? Maybe it's a dating thing, maybe it's a professional thing, maybe it's all mixed up in your head because maybe you're dating professions, all right?
Well, so I dropped out of law school to become a journalist, so I'm a very bad influence in a room like this, and it was a very hard decision to make. My parents were truly horrified, and it's really awkward to change direction, right? It's very difficult to explain yourself, to confess your real ambitions, and then to make everything worse, it was Harvard, which I'm mentioning not to brag, but because to my immigrant family, it was very, very difficult for them to fathom. And there were a couple of ways I knew that it was the right decision. And one of them was that I was so drawn to journalists. I really was. And I liked my law school classmates, and I'm still friendly with some of them. But I if I'm being honest, I did find them a little risk averse, a little conventional, a little conformist. And I found journalists so curious and engaged and alive. You know, just journalists like cared so much about everything. And I did want to be in journalists' company. And yeah, I don't think it's like a contradiction to say that I wanted to marry you and I wanted to be a journalist.
So one of the amazing things that's already starting to happen with this book, and I'm seeing it in the live events, and I'm seeing it in the TV interviews and all the rest of it, is that people are grabbing hold of the concepts and especially the advice in this book and sort of making it their own, shaving off 12% here or 22% there, and that kind of giving it their own spin. And as a journalist, particularly someone who's doing service journalism, right, who's giving advice, it's always what you love to see because you don't have all of the answers. And you hope that if you draw an engaged enough reader base, they're going to do things different. They might even do things better. And one of the things that I loved that came up on opening night on Sunday had to do with this whole idea. And, we don't have to talk about whether this is bad advice or good advice, but I know a generation ago, our parents were fond of saying, well, just follow your passion and the money will come, right? Follow your passion and everything will work out. And some people think that's terrible advice. But Priya Parker, the author of The Art of Gathering, which is an incredible book, and she's a good friend of ours. Priya was helping lead the charge Sunday night, and Priya said, she said, one of the things that I like to think about and that I, encourage young people to think about is what makes you angriest. Because in solving for the anger, you may well be solving for a need. And so how do you think about following your passion, Jodi, as a piece of advice, and how it relates to finding need in the world? Is thinking about need through the lens of anger, a better way to identify needs that exist in the world?
I think what you're talking about with anger is one subset of something bigger that's really potent, which is some of the most beautiful, important, generous careers are careers that arise in response to some sort of tragedy or problem. Who here knows somebody who has had a career like that, like a doctor whose family was afflicted by illness at a very young age, or became a therapist sort of in response to problems in their own family, somebody who faced some sort of early loss or trial that became fuel for a career? I know people like that. Do you? It's incredible. It's very, and then you can treat the world that way as well, right? You can see problems out there and devote your life to addressing them. I think it's a really beautiful, meaningful thing to do. I often think that the best people in life are like the people who were handed really bad circumstances and somehow used them to create something very positive. It gives you the need, right? It gives you the propulsion because other people need the thing that you're providing. And I think it can be a source of enormous meaning. And also it doesn't have to be depressing. When Megan and I meet with student groups and, people like almost 10 years later still want to hear the story of the Harvey Weinstein investigation, the first question is invariably the same. It's always, how did you guys deal with the trauma of the material? And we love that question because we love to shock the students. And we say, yeah, the material was really disturbing. And of course, we shed tears in private. But the day you get to confront Harvey Weinstein at the office is the best day ever. And so I think when you're 22 years old, it's really because you don't have craft yet, no matter how smart you are or no matter how good your scores are, I think it's really hard when you're that young to see how satisfying it is to be at a place of mastery and use it to address something important.
Okay, so that leads us straight away to one of my favorite pieces of advice in the book, which is what can you do right now, whether you have a job you like, or whether you have a job that you don't like, or whether you would just love to have a job that you don't like. What can you do right now that nobody needs to give you permission to do that can actually be helpful in identifying needs in the world and potentially the craft that you could build to match them?
Or it could just help you move forward. Does anybody here know of a young person who has applied for like many, many jobs and not gotten a bite? Yeah. It's really terrible, right? I mean, it's before we go into the answer, I wanted to say this is so dislocating. I mean, all of us bought into this bargain that education plus hard work plus being, like a decent, presentable person equals something good job-wise. And the idea that, our kids hustled to get into college, we hustled to pay for it or managed to pay for it through financial aid, and that there might not be a secure job waiting on the other end, like, it's terrifying, right? That is a really foundational premise of our lives, and it's very, very scary. So this is my, and I think the hardest question, like in this topic area, and the hardest question I've been asked in the year I've been working on this book is, what is that person supposed to do? What is that person supposed to do, right? Like, what do we really tell that person? And so one of my favorite stories in the book is about a group of writers who met in New York about 25 years ago. And they were outsiders. They were freelancers. They were mostly women. Publishing was a very clubby industry. They didn't feel they had the right connections. And so they formed a group. And they decided to educate themselves in publishing. Most writers' groups are about what's on the page, right? They're workshopping text and whatnot. This wasn't. They decided that they were going to learn everything about how to publish a book. Do you need a book trailer? What does a publicist really do? What does an effective cover look like? What's it like to be an independent bookseller? And what do those people really need? So they kind of created their own school for publishing. They met, I think, once a month at night. They invited great guests. You know how this story ends already, right? The members of the group were Rebecca Skloot, who published The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, Gretchen Rubin, who published The Happiness Project, and then lots of other books on the same themes, Susan Cain, who wrote Quiet, Sherry Fink, who wrote 5 Days at Memorial, which is maybe my favorite nonfiction book ever. Pamela Paul was in the group and eventually had to leave because she became the editor of the New York Times Book Review. So the point is, these women who banded together and sought an answer in the collective and generously helped one another were able to get something for themselves that the world was not going to hand them. And the reason why I think it's good advice for our poor person who's applied for 150 jobs is that, listen, maybe a collective group like that, hopefully it will lead to a job, right? It's a pretty decent strategy, to take your own networking and expand it by another 10 or 15 people. But even if it doesn't, at least, to your question, at least it's something that involves agency. At least it's something they can actually do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I love about The Invisibles is that it's a gang, right? There's nothing quite illicit about it, but there was nobody else doing what they were doing in the world of, authordom or aspiring authordom, the way that they were doing it. And they consistently, over years and years, sought ways to beat the system. And, publishing is a system, book publishing is a system. It's not always the most effective system. And authors are, sort of constantly pushing back against it. And those women really cracked the code. And they were way more powerful together than they were alone. So my other favoriteest piece of advice, and then I think we want to take it to these folks and get them to ask some questions. The other advice that I like the best that I wanted to seize on is something that's actually quite small but powerful, right? Like some of the best career advice I ever heard that was only useful to me 10 or 15 years came from somebody who said to me at one point, and they thought that they were quoting Jerry Garcia. It's not actually his quote. I went and looked it up eventually. But they said that supposedly Garcia said, right, like we're not trying to make the best music on earth. We're not trying to make the loudest music on earth. We're just trying to make the music that only we can make. Right, and the Grateful Dead succeeded at that, by leaps and bounds. That's a hard thing to tell a 22-year-old, right? Just go out there and be singular, right? Be a unicorn in the world. But what you can say to a 22-year-old is what you said, which is think about the things that your friends are constantly asking you to do, and only you. And I know what it was for you.
Totally. I think, I think for young people, looking to their friends and the role they play in their social relationships is really powerful, because our kids play roles, right? They're the group psychologist, they're the party planner, they're the regulator of social relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I was everybody's editor in college. And the reason why I think those relationships are so good to observe is because social relationships in college in your early 20s are free from some of the suffocating pressures of all this career services stuff. And talking to your friends is often easier than talking to your parents about this stuff. And so by observing what we gravitate to in social settings, I think that's very helpful. But in response to your Jerry Garcia quote, there's something else I want to say, which is that, so we don't really know the answer yet in terms of what's going to happen with AI and entry-level jobs. It's still happening, it's too early, we can't quite judge it yet. But what we can say that AI has already done is applying for a job has become very digital and very lonely. We think of it as searching for work has always been hard, but we think of it as a social experience where it's handshakes and conversations and coffees and da-da-da-da-da. I think maybe we'll get one of our AI interviewees here to tell the story. There's a cold coldness and sterility to the job application process now, and it's also homogenizing. What's happening is that because AI rewards certain keywords, everybody's using the same keywords, and then everybody looks the same, right? And employers are telling us that they're actually having some trouble with this technology as well for this reason. So I think that emphasis on individuality is very well placed. I think we are ready to turn things over to you. Oh, wow. This joint has great lighting. Okay, great. Here's the way we're going to do it, though, because I think the hour demands something other than a typical book Q&A. First, we're going to get one of our AI interviewees to tell us the story of what that really feels like, because it's something that everybody here should really understand how new and strange in many ways this is. But then here's something I want you to think about for a minute, because this is what we're going to do afterwards. We're going to do a little business. What we did in Brooklyn the other night, and it actually worked, is that we had about 10 young people in the audience who were looking for jobs, and they were willing to stand up and say what they were looking for. So let's say that this is a slightly older crowd. So let's say that if you're a young person looking for work, you can do it. Or if you're a parent or an aunt or something, who has a younger relative in that position, if you're willing, you could mention what they're looking to do. And then we'll get a show of hands on whether anybody else in the room knows anybody else in that field. And we'll see if we can do some matchmaking. Now, the other night it worked. Like there was one person who really wanted to work in radio, and there was another who wanted to work in sports journalism. And when we said, does anybody here know anybody in radio? Like 15 hands went up, and I'll show you the way we're going to do it. But I'd like to see, instead of just talking about these ideas in a theoretical way, whether we can actually begin to solve some problems. Okay, first, again, remind me, who had the AI interviews here? You did? Okay, great. Will you tell us the story? Sure. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't need a microphone. My son finished his master's degree in engineering, design, and innovation. He's very competent. He wants to make outdoor gear, soft goods most primarily to begin with. But he had an AI interview like a few months ago. The only downfall, well, there are some downfalls of this kid, but one of the main downfalls of this kid is just speaking on his behalf and social interaction. He's, like I said, he's quite confident, he's quite bright, but he's not gonna whip the room into a frenzy. So to have a computer ask him questions, he's like, well, I think I did okay. I don't think he did any, and I don't think they're calling me back, and they didn't. But he could do any of those jobs. Not just because I'm his mom.
Has anybody in this room personally done an AI interview themselves? Do we have any firsthand witnesses? No? Okay, so I'll just describe to you what it is so that you know. Basically, like it's usually an early screening round. You get an email saying, great, like you're getting an early interview. You make an appointment, and then when you get on your laptop at the appointed hour, you are asked questions. Sometimes it's by voice or text, but sometimes there's an AI character that has like a whole persona that's asking you questions. And then there's a little countdown. You maybe get like 30 seconds to prepare your answer, and you're recorded. Right? Like you're in a little phone booth, like a little camera booth or something. But nobody's watching the video, right? The AI is crunching and analyzing your answer and delivering it back to. So the employers don't even see what you're saying. I think they have the ability to look it up if they want to, but really they're just using it to cull people, right? So and part of why this is important is because it used to be that if you applied for a job and you didn't get it, you still got something out of the process probably, right? You visited an office you had never seen before. You had a learning experience in the interview. You watched the body language of the person interviewing you. You had the opportunity to ask questions about the organization, maybe to get some feedback on how you did. And so there was a little bit more reciprocity in the interaction. This is very, and by the way, there are defenders of the system who say that it's more fair and better at finding talent. But in my reporting, have found that young people really don't like it at all. Okay, let's make sure we're giving a chance to any young person here who's looking for a job. Do we have anyone under 30 tonight who's looking for a job? Fantastic. We're totally friendly. We're here in support of you. Would each of you stand up and explain what you're looking for? You want to bring the mic?
Oh, sorry.
I think. Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
great. And tell us your name.
Okay. Do I like?
Yeah, stand up.
Hi. Oh my God, there's a lot more people. Hi, my name is Marta Hulme. I'm currently 19 years old, and I'm on a gap year from college. But I have been working in theater and entertainment in New York City, particularly. And actually, my first job is a production assistant, which was this past fall-ish, which is on my little name tag. But I am currently looking for a job for spring, summer, before I go off to college at SUNY Purchase. But I am looking for particularly any kind of production assistant, or ultimately I would love to be ultimate dream goal would be at some point in my career would be an artistic director, but for some kind of venue or company or something like that. But obviously, starting out, I would love to be more involved in, I guess, the creative direction and learn more about the creative direction of different companies. And what better to do that than start out as a production assistant? So learning how productions work and how things work and how everything fits together to make things happen, and how to foster these events and spaces and that allow people to do their craft as actors or as lighting designers or sound designers or just any kind of designer in theater. So that's it.
Okay. So does anyone in this room either work in theater or know somebody who does, a neighbor, a college roommate? Great. Okay, great. So wait, don't do it now, but this is your job. All of our theater people, when the event is over and I'm signing books and whatever, all of our theater people, and wait, tell me your name again? Marta. Okay, Marta is going to meet the theater people in that back corner. Marta, don't leave without getting contact information. I'm a reporter, trust me, it's a big mistake, okay? Thank you very much. Even if it's just somebody who's might be willing to do a phone call, right? Or even exchange some texts, that would be incredible. Thank you. Okay, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Haley Fuller. I currently work in sports communications. My background in undergrad and grad school was in journalism, and then I specialized in media innovation and content strategy. So apologies if I end up putting you two on the spot a little bit with that one. I really love audience engagement. My dream would be to write a newsletter for a newspaper or a magazine, like New York Times, The Daily, or something of that sort. Sorry, I would have said this to anyone, and
Go
you two
for
happen
it.
to be the people here. But I really love talking to people and making more complicated ideas and things like that make sense to people, and to make sure that everyone gets the information that they need and that they want. And I have a lot of fun doing things like that and making it accessible, whether through shorter bites or social media and things like that. I've also done some investigative journalism in college and things. But that's me, and I'd love to get back into journalism.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, and just to be clear, is it only sports journalism or journalism writ large?
For me, writ large, I just got a job in sports.
Right.
But that was never the original plan.
Okay, great. I will raise my hand. Ron will raise his hand. Does anybody else know anybody else in journalism? And particularly, because journalism is a very big field, I want to call out some of the things you said. You talked about audience development and social media in addition to traditional reporting stuff. Does anybody else know anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, Ron, I'm going to turn this over to Ron, but first I'm going to say that that's going to be the journalism corner after the event, but then come to Ron. I'll be on the signing line, and come to me at the table there.
I don't know if I'm going to make it back there, but I need to pay you one compliment and then offer you one really good contact. So the compliment is that you have found something in journalism that's relatively new, and it's new enough that there are not a lot of people out there who are experts on it, and it's newsletters. And the reason why newsletters are hot right now is because, for 10 or 15 years, journalism was being promoted through, social media this and Instagram that. And, the problem with those things is that you're at the mercy of somebody else's platform and somebody else's algorithm, right? When you're writing a newsletter, you own people's email address, right? And they come or they go or they take themselves off or unsubscribe, or maybe they don't if you're really good at it. So because this is so new, there's not a lot of experts, and you can become one really, really fast. So you've identified something really important, number one. Number two, I know the guy who started the newsletter about newsletters. And he is the nicest guy. And I'm going to introduce you to him tomorrow.
Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, you, sir. No, pass. Okay, anybody else under 30 before we move slightly up the age ladder? Okay, great. Now let's do parents. Are there any parents here whose kids? We definitely coming back to you. Anybody else who has a kid who is on a job quest who thinks that the kid would not kill us all if we mention it tonight? Okay, great. I see. And how much time do we have, by the way?
We're 7:59, so.
Okay, so we'll do 10 minutes, right? Okay, raise your hands again. Let's pick 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's include you too, because let's do 5 and just be brief. Do a sentence or two about what they're looking for.
My son, James Toomey Wilson, is a senior at Northwestern. He plays classical guitar. He's also studying econ and math. He got recruited into this major because he was so bloody good at it. So he's brilliant. He has incredible ears and incredible at conducting his ensembles. Just a real beautiful expresser and team player in performance. Plays in the pits, all that good stuff. Got a programming job in the math department. He wants a job in acoustics. I looked at my alumni network. He looked at his alumni network. We came out with maybe 10 people between us. Anybody here know someone in acoustics?
That's a great question. Oh, I love that you chose something hard, and I also can't bear for us to be stumped. Oh, what about the National Sawdust people?
Well, Jonathan still knows people at Skullcandy. If it's that kind of acoustics, headphones acoustics.
You mean like auditorium acoustics? No. I think I have an idea. I have an idea.
Those people who built that sound system.
Yeah, exactly. There was a sound system in Brooklyn that blew us away. Come to me on the signing line, and I'm going to give you the name of this place for you guys to look up. Okay, moving across the room this way. Who is next? I think Teresa, right? Great.
Hi there. So this query is for child number 2, who's not here. She is about to graduate from New Paltz in lithography, which is a lost craft, or a craft that is truly going away, 300-pound stones, etc. If anyone knows anyone who may have studio space, maybe gallerists, we're looking to think very broadly. She's an intuitive marketer. She's very good interpersonally, so sort of in a gallery space, serving customers or something like that.
Okay, great.
Lithography.
Who knows somebody in the visual arts in that kind of area? Anybody? It is really specific.
That was my objective.
Okay, that is really specific. There's that amazing new place in Gowanus that's the space for all the incredible artists. I've like maybe one idea, but I don't really know anybody. Okay. Okay.
Right. I mean, another thing to think about there is, can you go work at a place where you're most likely to meet those people, right? So, if she went to work at
Like the
at
ink
the
store
Kiwanis
for the
Powerhouse,
lithographers or whatever.
or a place that makes that kind of space available, even if you're not yet qualified to win the space yourself, right? Yeah.
Doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, our friend in gray.
Hello, I have the sweetest daughter. Her name's Violet. She is 22, graduated from college last May, so it's been almost 1 year. She has multiple part-time jobs. Her degree is in the history of art and architecture. Her dream is to work in a museum. And people have said maybe that I've maybe steered her in the wrong direction by saying follow your passion and all of that, because museums are having a hard time right now at really all the humanities. And so we're in like the Hartford area, and so she's applied to different places like the Mark Twain House, New Britain Museum of American Art, the Mattatuck Museum in Waterbury. And one of the problems is that they also just want to give her a part-time job, or even worse, volunteering. She already volunteers for all these museums, waiting for a whole year for something to open up in like curation or like even being a docent, that kind of thing. So, I don't want the artists in the world to give up hope that there is something out there for them that they can actually be paid for. Shouldn't have to be paid much, just something.
Oh my God, I'm so moved. Who here feels just like so moved by that, right? I know. Okay, does anybody know anybody who works in museums? Okay, so who here knows anybody in museums? Okay, great. That's going to be our museum corner right there after the event. Okay, bring us home.
My son Josh is no slouch, as you know. In March he got his master's
If
degree.
only Josh knew that
Oh
we're
my God.
all talking about
He'd
him.
be pissed.
Yeah.
Nobody tell Josh.
No. He got his master's in engineering design and innovation from Northwestern University in March. He has an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering and creative technology and design. Last summer, without getting an internship, he decided to do the 486-mile Colorado Through Trail. He's completely creative and scientific, and he would like to do soft goods and outdoor gear, or making tents, or making those things you stick into rocks so you can climb the rock. He's a total outdoorsman, and he lives his life and his work. So that's what he wants to do.
Does anybody know anybody in outdoor goods?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So outdoor goods is going to be up by the podium.
Jodi, you know someone in outdoor
We
goods.
do, yeah. Yeah, come to me on the signing line. Okay, so to close us out tonight, I don't do a lot of reading as a nonfiction author, but there's one paragraph in this book that I think is the most important, and I'd like to read it to you to finish. Do not give up before you start. Frustration and disappointment are certain. Failure is possible. But if you abdicate the search for satisfaction now, you will put it further out of reach. Resist the urge to arm yourself with uninformed cynicism, masking as oh-so-wise pragmatism that's really just good old fear of rejection. We do not yet know what the world will offer you. Thank you.